What's going on, guys? What's cracking out here in the garage? And for once, not drinking beer, but having some nice coffee. Not just any coffee, but a nice Modesta coffee. Anyway, so if you already saw the title of this, we're gonna go over the transmission that's in the Supra right now, which is the T56 Magnum, and some of the other options that come with the Supra, and some options people go over. I did a video on this like 2+ years ago. Looking back at it, there's some things I could have gone over a little bit better. So in this video, I'm hoping to do that. There's been some misconceptions with the T56 Magnum and some, I'm gonna pretty much say lies about it. Same thing with the V160. Some people say some really dumb stuff about it, that it's this or that, or it's just no good anymore, which that's not true either. So I'm making this video to kind of go over what the real limitations of these Transits are, what the cost breakdown to a point is for these transmissions, and what you're looking to get into and what your goals are. Depending on what you want, some people have different goals. For me, I wanted to go all out. In my opinion, the T56 Magnum was that. But I'm gonna sit down here and we're gonna go over this step by step. We'll start with the lowest, working our way up. So I'm gonna try and discuss as many of the transmissions as I can here today. We're gonna start off with the W58. Now, if you know what the W58 is, it comes in a multitude of cars I should say. But speaking relative to Supra terms, the W58 is what came in the non-turbo Supra. It is a very buttery smooth transmission, but the gears itself are very small, the teeth were fine on it, and they couldn't hold an absorbent amount of power. I had 400 horsepower on this car, but they tend to, one, wear out synchros pretty easily, especially when you try to speed shift them or shift them quickly. Number two, the problem was, again, with the gears being so small, they would just shear the teeth off the gears. They just didn't have enough face, didn't have enough gear to hold the power. So for me, realistically, 350, 400 horsepower, if you're actually gonna try and drive the car, that would be the max. I would not want to go any more than that. You can, there's people that said they have, and they've drag stripped it, and that's fine. But if you're looking for a relative true limit and something that's going to last you a couple years, then I would say 350, 400 being the tippy end. 350 is where you would want to stay at, be in that happy area, which if you're running a Supra, is not very much fun considering a stock TT 6-speed by just putting an intake and an exhaust. Probably not even that, honestly, just putting an intake on it will get you that 350 wheel horsepower range. So it kind of takes the fun out of it. But if you're an NAT guy or just looking for something to get that turbo noise and something that you're like, you know what, I've turboed the car, I've swapped the motor, but I don't have money for the drivetrain, you can do that and it absolutely does work. Now, next up is the first, I will call it power holder mod, or a real transmission that can hold some power, and that would be the R154. Now, people always ask me, there's different types of the R154. So the R154 actually started out as a truck transmission, believe it or not. It's been going on since the 70s. This transmission's been made, and it actually was sold the whole way up into GM vehicles known as the Pontiac Solstice, and it was the Saturn Sky. It was called the AR5 transmission in that, but actually the gears, the center case, everything is identical to the R154. So it's been made for 40 years now. It's now discontinued, no longer made, but you can actually, I shouldn't say discontinued, but you can still buy a brand new tripod style R154, which I'll speak on here in a little bit, from Toyota. So what an R154 is, or what most people buy, is the R154 out of the Mark III Toyota Supra turbo model, or you can get out of the Toyota Chaser. Now, the difference between these two is the one in the Mark III has an internal shifter. Hopefully I can throw a picture up here for you. And then the Toyota Chaser uses an external tripod style like the V160. Again, I'll throw that up here for you guys to get the difference. Now, the biggest problem with the Mark III transmission is, one, they are single synchros, okay? They don't have double and triple synchros like the later model does, which is good and bad. Makes for a notchier shift if you like that. It's not nearly as smooth. It's harder to rev them out. Some people say, I never had an issue per se, but some people say that. But if you're going to rebuild it, it is much cheaper. Now with the tripod R154, they are a double and triple synchro transmission. Now reverse is non-synchronous, so you need to make sure your car is dead stop when you go into reverse. It's not synchronized. Some newer transmissions are, R154 is not. I wanted to throw that out there. The tripod R154 is what I highly recommend to people. That's what I had in this. And you didn't have the gear slosh issue, so with the Mark III, oil tended to come up out of it. If they weren't ventilated properly, it would build up pressure and it would actually come up out the shifter. A lot of Supra guys had issues with that. My friend Ron had a problem with that for quite some time. I didn't want to deal with that, plus with the triple synchros and everything, it was just a better option to go that route, and I was much happier with it. And unlike most people, I was actually very, very happy with the R154. It held the power fine and did everything I needed it to. It's a bolt-up application. You can buy 2JZ, 1JZ bell housing, and it bolts right up. Clutch options are plentiful. It's been done a million times for these cars, and it's very easy to do. Power limit on those is around the 600 to 700 horsepower range, or around the 500 to 550 foot-pounds of torque. Now, I'm going to try, I should really base this more off torque than I should horsepower. Torque's with brake things, that's where you're actually it's a calculated number to get horsepower from torque. So it's kind of like with the W58, that would be around 250, 275 foot-pounds, maybe 300 foot-pounds is the limit of that. This is around 500 to 550 foot-pounds is what you want to be maxing out at. Anything past that, you will be shearing the gear off. Now, I'm going to go more in depth here, and this video is probably going to be pretty long because I'm going to try and talk as much as I can on this. The problem is with the R154, and even for myself included, I had a built, quote unquote, built R154. What does that mean? Well, the gears never change. So the gears are factory. When you're building an R154, you're changing synchros, your shift forks, thrust bearings, all that stuff, that's all getting replaced. But at the end of the day, your gears are still factory. Are they stouter than a W58? Absolutely. No one is doubting that. But once you're into gear, that factory gear is still the same gear that came out of the car in 1988, or it could be as late as 1987 for the first R154 in the Mark III Supra. So they're getting older, they're weaker, they're not as big as the V160 and T56 Magnum. So they do have their limits. You know, you can bang gears all day long. The shift forks help you from not breaking them. The R154 was known for breaking the shift forks. That fixes it by going to build shift forks and building the transmission. But at the end of the day, once you're in that gear is still holding it. The biggest problem with the R154 too was third gear. Third gear is furthest out and it would tend to flex and it would chip a tooth, and once it chipped, it tended to shear off everything else, and well, you're kind of done. Now, me personally, I got 2 years of hard miles out of my transmission and it never skipped a beat. Again, each person's gonna have a different application with this, you're gonna have different issues, but for me personally, it held up fine. This car made 654 wheel horsepower and 490 foot-pounds of torque for about 13,000 miles on that trans, and I had plenty of burnouts, anti-lag, all that fun stuff with it, banging gears, racing, you know, in Mexico, and it held up just fine for me. So some people prefer that route, but that's the limit of that transmission. Next up, guys, we're going to talk about the V160 and T56 here. Now, these two are where we're going to get comparable, and this is where it's going to get debatable about things, and this is probably going to start arguments. So please bear with me here. I'm not trying to make anyone mad or decide with one side or the other, but this is what I know as of right now. So we'll start with the V160, and then we'll move to the T56. So for the V160, that is what came in the TT 6-speed Supra. In Japan, they also had the V161. We're just going to speak with the V160 here today. The V161 was slightly different gear ratios and stuff, but we're going to speak directly on the V160 that came in the US models and some of the Japanese models. Now for the V160, we're going to start off with the factory ratings were and what people are making power with them. Let's face it, the V160 was king, absolute king for years and years and years. Guys making 1,200 foot-pounds of torque, 15, 16, 1,700 real horsepower, any stock transmission. Nothing's touched. You put a good clutch in it, a tilt and triple, quadruple clutch, and just let it go. It wasn't until recently here when they started discontinuing the trans, and guys were pushing them even harder. Newer turbos came out, we were pushing the motors harder and harder. Billet block came out, so we're making more and more power, that we started to see them break. The biggest problem with the V160 and a lot of the older transmissions is, unfortunately, Getrag, the manufacturer of it, no longer makes it. Now, there is some reasoning behind that some people say that Toyota itself thought of Getrag years ago. They had warranty issues that Getrag said wasn't their fault, it was a Toyota fault, and they were warranting something they didn't believe in. Again, that's what rumor told, and I don't know if that's true or not, but it's kind of hearsay or near no point in this video, but I just wanted to bring that up. It's probably been about 5 years now since they've sold the V160 new. And that was pretty much your end-all be-all go-to. I mean, if you were a Supra guy, you didn't think about building a trans because you knew you had the V160. It would hold all day long the power you would need. Once they started discontinuing it, you could no longer even rebuild them, as the parts to rebuild them are now scarce. You know, they're selling for $6, $7, $8 grand used. There's some on eBay that are selling for $11,000, $12,000 still in the Toyota crate. Those are pretty crazy, especially when you have other options out there now. It's kind of hard to justify, but for years there, you had to find a used transmission and roll the dice. Guys were paying $6, $7 grand for used trans and just saying, well, I hope this works. But they were great trans. They shifted great, they worked great. They did have some small flaws and stuff. They did have a first generation and a second generation of the V160. Toyota made some changes to it. Even the outside casing had different ribbing on it in the later models. I think they did change some things internally. I want to say it was the synchros. Please don't quote me on that. I want to say it was the internal synchros they changed to make it a little bit better. And I think maybe the thrust washer also. But there is a difference between a first generation, second generation. If you do have a first generation trans and you're trying to rebuild it, all the new synchros and gears and everything are based off the second generation. So if you have a first generation trans, you can't just like fix one or two things. You have to replace everything as a whole, which makes it a little bit more expensive on top of it. So that's something you have to weigh into. I'll try to dig up some pictures for you guys. There is, you know, like I said, there's a couple extra ribs on the second generation exterior than the first generation. So I'll try to show that for you. Again, that transmission was the end all be all until we ran into cost and no longer being made. There is Arnott out, I believe in the Netherlands. Please don't quote me on that either. Who's been making parts for us, but those are even expensive. You know, to rebuild an entire trans, you're looking at $5 grand. I have one friend I just talked to, Eric there, he just got quoted $5 grand for the internal parts. That doesn't include the rebuild yet. So, and you're buying a used trans with used aluminum casing. It's a lot of money, and that's nothing else. That's not a shifter, that's just the trans. That's no shifter, that's no tripod, that's nothing. You're looking at 10, 11, 12 grand when you're all said and done. Like it's hard to swallow when you're spending that much money. So that's part of the problem and why now the T56 Magnum has become such a big deal. And I want to talk about that and kind of get over some misconceptions people have or some rumors people have about it that is totally not true. I've got the miles on it now, and I personally installed it, did that install for you guys. I'll link that right here. You guys can click this to go to the install video. But I want to show you guys and tell you guys why it's not that bad or where these rumors are coming from. So we'll start off with some of the couple things. Number one, people say it's so loud. Now, some of the noise that you're hearing, or most of the noise that you're hearing, is not from the trans itself, it's from the damn bell housing. So every other car has an aluminum bell housing. Well, what Joel did and a lot of the guys are doing is using the SFI QuickTime bell housing, which is a steel bell housing. Well, if you guys know anything about resonance, a steel bell housing versus an aluminum bell housing, the resonance off that is going to be 10 times louder than what aluminum is going to be. So your clutch, everything around there is like, you can just hear it. Like when I turned this car over the first time, I thought something was wrong at first because the starter is right there attached to it. And it was just like, you could hear it resonate. I'm like, oh, is something wrong? No, it's just you have a steel bell housing, guys. You're going to hear that noise. Now, I will say, driving down the road, I don't understand what people are saying. It seems quiet to me, especially compared to my R154. This is way quieter. Maybe you V160 guys are complaining, but if you have all your panels in, you have it sealed up correctly, mine is dead quiet. I'm using Mobil 1 ATF fluid in it, nothing special, dead quiet for me. Not a single noise out of it. Obviously, it's a manual transmission, so you have something like that, but I mean, I don't know what you guys expected to be dead quiet. For me, it's been great. Number two is going to be the shifter. This seems to be the biggest debate with this thing right now. It is notcher. Yes, you have to use the Sicky shifter. Yes. Is it a little bit stiffer? Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's still a short shifter, and it is short, and I like that. Like, looking back at it now, the R154 had such long shifts and such long throws that like now I could easily bang gears 10 times easier. I didn't realize how much time I was spending and wasting shifting through the gears that now I don't have. I know some people said about the shifters with these, the bolts and nuts will come off and stuff. Now, what Sicky has done is use thread locker or nuts on it, and they use red thread locker on it on top of it to make sure they don't come off. And so far, I've been fine. I've taken the panel off twice now, checked the bolts, everything's still good. We're at 400 some odd miles in, and I'm still good to go. Number three, leaks. So I've heard about people having leak issues, and I want to speak on that too. Guys are putting the Sicky shifters on after you remove the Tremec one and not putting any sealant on it. Guys, I can't say this enough. It's a shifter that is metal on metal. You have to put some type of sealant on it. Nothing crazy, but something. There's no rubber gasket there, so just get some Toyota FIPG or just go down to your local auto parts store and get some sealant, rub it around there, put your shifter on, bolt it down, and it'll never leak, ever. Another place they say about it's leaking is from the tail shaft. Now, I haven't had any problem with that yet. I've had the car up 3 times now to check it just for that reason. Not a single drop. Now, I've had the car well up over 100 miles an hour, again in Mexico, and, you know, forcing all that fluid back where it should leak. I know that was a big problem with R154s. My R154 personally did leak also, but this one hasn't leaked a drop yet. Now, I'm not sure it's because it's properly sealed, if the drive shaft's built better where it couples together. I don't know, but I haven't had a drop come out yet, guys. So I'm not sure where that is coming from, if some people didn't do the breather mod. So if you look at the T56, there's this long black tube that comes off it. Again, that's in the how to install video I did. You need to take out the rubber cap inside there and kind of flare out the tube some. This way it breathes properly. I haven't had any issues with it so far. So I'm hoping that helped a couple people. If you haven't done that mod, unfortunately, if you can't get to it by hand, you're gonna have to drop the trans and do it. If not, it's just gonna continually leak. I'm sorry, it's going to. And you're probably gonna say, well, why doesn't Tremec fix that from the factory? I don't know, unfortunately, it stinks, but if you get it brand new, I mean, it took me literally 5 minutes to go burp, burp, fix. And you would think, again, Tremec, why don't they just do that? I don't know, but for 5 minutes of my time, I didn't really want to complain about it. It was pretty easy and good to go, considering other transmissions have way worse issues. Now, let's talk about some of the really good things. It holds 700 foot-pounds from the factory. The V160 was rated for 500 foot-pounds from the factory. And remember, guys, I was just saying that they're holding 1,200 foot-pounds in real racing applications. This is a factory 2-year warranty trans on top of it. They will give you a 2-year warranty as soon as you buy it. And on top of it, it's only $3,000, actually it's less than $3,000, it's like $2,800 for a brand new transmission shipped to your door. I don't get it, like you can't beat that. Once you get the parts and bolt everything up, you know, those things really don't go bad. The only thing that goes bad is that box in between. If it goes bad because you're buying a brand new one, they fixed all the issues in the old T56. And that's another thing I wanted to bring up. The T56 Magnum is based around the T56 shell and designed to bolt up way, but the internals of it are the same as the TR6060 that you find in the Dodge Viper, Newer Camaro, GT500, etc. So it is bulletproof for the most part. Now, is there people that had issues? Absolutely. But the best part is you send it back. Imagine buying a used V160 and having grinding issues and then spending $3 or $4 grand to fix that versus, oh, I send this out and they don't question it. There's been 2 guys so far that have had issues. It's just dumb luck of the draw. Everyone else hasn't had a single problem, including myself. And Tremec said, yep, cover it, no problem. They take pictures, send it to you, tell you why it had an issue, you know, and they send it all back to you, free and clear. I mean, you can't beat that. It's not even a 1-year, 2-year warranty, so you get 2 summers out of it at least, and you get plenty of true trying out of it. I don't understand why so many people complain about it, but in my eyes, it seems like the go-to transmission for these cars. The other option is the CD009, which I'm not going to speak much on because I personally don't have experience with it. I've experienced with all those other ones. Now, I had all this stuff to mock up and do the CD009, but I never personally drove it and went through all of that. Now I should say that I drove my buddy's car with it and stuff. I never liked the way it shifted and stuff, and didn't like the fact you had to bang up the tunnel. I know there's some different kits now. That was over 2.5, almost 3 years ago. There's different options, but I can't speak on that. For the cost wise, you're looking, depending on the clutch and everything, and this is everything said and done, I guess if you look at it right, and it depends on what the specials that Joel's running and stuff, you're looking at around $6 grand, and that's everything brand new too. I know CD009 is a big option right now, but you're buying a used transmission, which I get it too. I did that with the R154. I didn't want to go through that again. I wanted peace of mind. I wanted to do this right and be done. Plus, this is actually rated for it. You're buying a Nissan Trans that's not meant for the car and hoping it works. You have to cut it down the bell housing, put the custom adapter on it. This is all bolt on and go, and Joel includes everything with it too, so there's no guesswork at all in this. Also, your Speedo, everything works when he gives you the adapter kit for that. So it's a give and take, guys. I'm gonna leave this up to you. I wanna know down in the comments below what your opinion is, what transmission you went with, what your power levels you're at this day. I want feedback on this because this is my personal opinion, what I physically have gone through and dealt with. I really, really like the T56 Magnum. I can't say enough about it. It makes it 10 times easier to install with that belt, that QuickTime belt housing. So much easier to take things on and off. So guys, I want to know your opinion on this. Let me know down in the comments below what trans you're using. What do you plan to do in the future? If you have any questions for me, I'd like to know also. Again, guys, thank you very much for tuning in today. If there's any other questions too, please just let me know in the comments below so I can try to answer them as fast as possible. And this way everyone else can see them. I'm trying to get away from all the Facebook messages and stuff just because I just can't keep up with them. Please do it down in the comments and I'll get back to you. Pin your comments to make this easier so everyone else can see it and we can answer everyone's questions. Guys, thank you very much. Go check out the Pure Function website. I've got new merchandise. I got hoodies. I got hats. I've got a few hoodies left. I'm almost out of these. So guys, get them while you can. I've got them on sale right now. This is your time to buy. It's cold. It's winter. Get your stuff now. Thank you guys very much, and I will talk to you later. Peace!